So my name's Darren Challender. I work for Hitachi Vantara, which is a digital organisation. We do things like software and products and things like that. In terms of my background, I'm a operational transformation consultant, and I've spent the best part of the last 20 years working in healthcare. And in particular, one of the things that we've been looking at is the use of digital twins in terms of patient, and then how does that apply then to healthcare, and how does it help improve patient journeys and things like that. So, conscious of the time, because we have only got 8 minutes, what I'll do, I'll share my screen and then very quickly whiz you through a presentation, if that's okay. Here we go. So I will rattle through these slides, but I'll make these slides available at the end. What I'll very briefly do is to give you a very brief what we do, the sort of global challenges, and why do we think digital twins are the right step, and then what we think the next steps are going to be for patients and digital twins. Okay, so what do we do? So Hitachi does all sorts of different things. We run hospitals in Japan. We focus in 3 main areas. One is around experiences, so we do lots of things around genomics. We do precision medicine, and we also do things like robotic automation. We also build digital infrastructure, so we run big data centers and things like that. But on a solution side, we also do lots of things around things like cancer research. So we're one of the only organizations that produce proton beam machines. We do lots of things around digital operations and how do we help healthcare. But we also do things like ecosystems as well. So how do you provide solutions for patients in their homes? One of the key things around Hitachi that's really interesting and different is that we have what's referred to social innovation. So we do things because of the right things to do. So that's why we're involved in healthcare, because it's the right thing to do. So in terms of the global challenges, you'll have seen through the news recently, the big issues are around capacity in terms of having the healthcare system in place to be able to meet the demand, and demand is huge at the moment. There's huge pressures around workforce because the people that are involved in healthcare, they're really under pressure. Lots of staff are leaving, etc. So there's a real need to do something different. And you'll have seen, particularly through the news recently, around the performance that's being driven through the healthcare system at the moment as well. And we see those issues right across the world. It's not just within the UK. And from our perspective, there's 3 things that you can do. One is look at the way the operating models work and how do you bring digital in that to help drive innovation through the use of digitization and digital tools and techniques. But we also see it in the fact that you have to change the way that the system is managed as well in terms of clinical and operational management system, because how do you use those things in a very different way? And then providing those clinical decision makers and operational decision makers with decision support tools that helps them make better decisions in real time. So from our perspective, there's a whole series of tools and techniques that we think we can use to help that in terms of understanding demand and capacity, understanding flow through the organization. How does that then translate in terms of digital views around discharge, in terms of how do we manage the outflow of the organization? How do we track patients around the organization? How do we then create insights off the back of that to then be able to present that back to the clinical decision and operational decision makers to make better decisions around what's happening in real time today? So generally, there are a number of key challenges in terms of data accuracy and also things like maturity. There's a vast variation in the way that healthcare systems work. The volume of systems that are involved in healthcare, we've worked with organizations where they have anywhere from 200 systems that they work with on a daily basis up to 1,400 plus. So lots of technology out there, and how does all that come together, and how do we then present that back to clinicians and operational leaders to be able to make decisions in real time? So lots of challenges, and particularly around adoption, because of the vast majority of sort of systems that they have to interact with today. So how do we make that simpler? So from our perspective, we focus around a digital twin, and we focus around a patient. There's sort of 3 elements to the sort of patient journey. One is around primary care, one is around secondary care, and one is around the community care. Key areas that we need to look at from a digital perspective and sort of digital twin perspective is really understanding how do we anticipate the needs for primary care in terms of population health management, and how do we actually provide the right services in place within primary care. In terms of secondary care, then it's a slightly different focus. It's around optimization of the assets and optimization of that specialist healthcare system. And then around community care, then once people leave the hospital and go back into the community, the focus is really around the coordination of the community and how do they actually provide those services back to those patients in a community setting. So from a digital twin perspective, the way that we've looked at it is from a patient-centric point of view. Is how do we track a patient all the way through that process and understand every single interaction that they're going through, and how do we actually do that in real time so that we can make some real-time decisions based on that digital twin. Not only in real time, but then taking that information once we've recorded that and then understanding and generating insights off the back of that. And the reason for that is that once we understand the insights that are happening within that digital twin, we can present that back to the right part of the right part of the process, right part of the patient journey. One, to improve the patient journey and the patient experience, but also to present additional insights back to those users and those people and those healthcare practitioners and professionals to be able to generate insights that they wouldn't necessarily see in the moment. And that's because we've got that digital twin. And that's what's really different about this, is that we're tracking that patient all the way through to generate those additional insights, to generate improvement and try and help in terms of performance. So what does that really mean? So what that means is once you've got that data, it allows you then to integrate additional elements that will then help to generate the insights. So for instance, it allows you to bring data science in, it allows you to bring artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning, to do all sorts of different things. So to give you a flavor of what the digital twin can then help generate, it's around things like admission speciality. So when you turn up at a hospital now, based on the way you present, we can actually predict whether or not you're going to be admitted and which speciality you're going to be admitted to, because we've got all that rich data around the digital twin and understanding what you need. We can also then use that data to be able to predict how long you're going to be in hospital based on your condition, but also then using all that information then to be able to predict 3 days in advance what the impact is going to be on not only the hospital, but the services, the speciality, and potentially the community once you've been discharged as well. So that's where the digital twin really starts to drive benefit now, because it gives us a rich data, a rich source of insights to be able to present back to the organisation so they can be proactive and not reactive. Huge amount of challenges with that and a huge amount of work to do, but that's in place now and that's working today. So what does that mean in terms of next step for digital twins? Well, if we go back to those big issues, it allows us to coordinate care better. It allows us to manage flow better. It allows us simplified ways of working and better patient experience and outcomes. And that's because you've got the information layer then that actually happens in real time. So what are the next steps and where the future of this is going? So where it's really going to make a difference in the future is around how do we scenario analysis in terms of sort of the organisation, but can we do that on a health population? Can we do it on a primary care, secondary care, community care, etc.? We can start to think about how it designs new systems in different ways for healthcare. It can help us also understand disease progression, about how a disease can track through a population. And it helps us then to think about the resources that we need to address that, the capacity, and how you drive things like efficiency as well. It can also enable us, because we've got that data around the digital twin in terms of the patients, the processes, the care that's being delivered, the outcomes. It actually allows us to understand the clinical outcomes and also where the variation within those that outcome is going to be driven from as well. Is it being driven by a certain type of practice, certain type of treatment, certain type of clinician? It allows us to do that. And then some of the outcomes that could come from this in particular is things like new models of care, because it gives us a different way of looking at healthcare models, because it allows us to understand that insight, which is not necessarily there in the moment when you're trying to treat those patients. It gives us the ability to do automated scheduling of care, because we can optimize the organisation, because we can see all the care that's being delivered, all the treatments that are being delivered at the same time. And ultimately, it will drive better patient outcomes. Okay, so from an Hitachi perspective, we see this as a really exciting part of sort of innovation. It's a really exciting part of the business because it makes such a difference and such a social impact, because at some point we're all going to need healthcare. And from our perspective, we do this because it's the right thing to do. Okay, so I think that gets me back to time. If you'd like to talk about it more, I'm more than happy to talk about this. I've spent the last 5 years looking at digital twins and how we can help healthcare. So if you want to have a chat, more than willing to do that, and I will share as much information as I can possibly. Okay, thank you very much for your time.